everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of our usual Fossil Friday web chats. I'm your host, Brittany Stoneberg, the Outreach and Communications Coordinator for the Western Science Center. Joining me is Gabriel Santos, as always, the Collections Manager and Outreach Coordinator for the Raymond M. Alf Museum of Paleontology.
Hi, everybody.
And joining us today is Kallie Moore, producer and host of PBS Eons.
Hello. Good to be back again.
Good to see you. Our viewers had so many great questions during our live stream of Kallie and Blake's Fossil Friday web chats that we wanted to host a little Q&A to get to the ones that we weren't able to get to during the live stream. Okay, so here's a question from viewer Zelma. Both you and Blake have day jobs outside of Eons. How do you balance your different commitments?
Yeah, so obviously I can only talk for myself here, but I actually had to cut my hours on campus a little bit, and I do a lot of work. So usually my 9 to 5 is working at the Paleo Center on the University of Montana campus. But with everything that I'm doing with Eons, like I said, I've had to cut my hours a bit. So I'm kind of more part-time on campus and part-time on Eons. So I usually work during the day doing curation projects, and well, I used to supervise volunteers when I was actually on campus instead of at my apartment or in my closet. But in the evenings, I'm fact-checking scripts and looking through episode drafts, and so sometimes my days can be like 12-hour days. So like get going at 10 in the morning and I don't end until like 10 at night. So sometimes it's pretty heavy, but the best day ever usually during my week is the week that we post an Eons episode, because the script has been checked, it's been recorded, the episode is made, I've checked the draft images, like it's good to go. So I usually have like a little bit of a break after we post an episode. So it's busy, I'm hustling, but it's a lot of fun and I enjoy both of my jobs.
Great. Sounds like you've got quite a bit on your plate, but you're balancing it pretty well, it seems.
I try.
Well, let's see. Our next question is from Andani. I remember that you mentioned on SciShow Tangents about fossil opalization in Australia. Is there any skull fossil or partial skull fossils from Metamborosaurus, for example, at least partially opalized, or what were the largest pieces found? Also, how obscure in Antarctica when it comes to paleontology? That's quite a question.
Yeah, that was a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. So yes, opalized fossils are some of my favorites, and I'm so glad you caught that episode of SciShow Tangents. That was a really fun day. I love it when they have me on that podcast. Now, there have been a couple of relatively complete skeletons found that were opalized, and one of them included about 60 bones from at least 4 individual dinosaurs named Fostoria, and I'm not even going to try the genus or the species name because boy howdy, it's a lot of letters that normally aren't next to one another. So Fostoria is very similar to Metamborosaurus. I don't know that one either. Dang, I don't know my Australian dinosaurs. We obviously need to do an episode about Australian dinosaurs so I can learn how to say all these names. So Fostoria was published in 2019, so this is actually a relatively recent find. And it was about 16 feet long and lived in the mid-Cretaceous, so about 100 million years ago. And it also included the first partial skull of a dinosaur discovered from New South Wales. So as far as I know, the dinosaur that the question was asking about has not been found opalized, and I'm not sure about the skull either. But at least Fostoria is opalized. It's got a partial skull. There's at least 4 individuals. It's super, super cool. Now, there's another non-dinosaur skeleton that was found opalized as well. Eumunosaurus is a pliosaur, so it's a short-necked marine reptile, and it was found in 1987. So we've known about this one for quite a long time, and it was nicknamed Eric, which I wonder if that's like who found it or something. I didn't get much farther into my research about why it's called Eric. But anyways, it was small. It was about the size of a modern seal, which kind of shocked me because I always think of marine reptiles as being very large, and this one was actually pretty small. And it lived about 115 million years ago. And it's the most complete opalized fossil vertebrate that's known. So almost the entire skeleton was found, and almost the entire skeleton is opalized. Both of these fossils are from southern Australia, so that's the only place in the world that I know of having like big opalized fossils, and they're usually always found in the opal mines and things like that. So for the next part of that question about Antarctica, surprisingly, Antarctica is like the next frontier of paleontology. So during the Mesozoic, when dinosaurs were hanging out, Antarctica wasn't on the South Pole yet, and it was this lush environment that supported a ton of life. It included dinosaurs like the 25-foot-long, cold-crested killer Cryolophosaurus. And according to Wikipedia, which I know isn't the best source, but you know, it's a good starting place, there are 6 known species of dinosaur from from Antarctica. So there's a lot there. It's just the field seasons are obviously really short, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. You also have to find exposed rock, which also isn't easy, but it's getting easier because of climate change to find the exposed rock. So we're getting there. A bunch of other fossils have been found in Antarctica, including the largest and heaviest known elasmosaur. So it's a type of plesiosaur, long neck, flippers, marine reptile. And it weighed between 11 and 14 tons. That's a pretty big animal, and a head to tail length of nearly 40 feet. So there's also some earlier Mesozoic stuff, like from the Triassic, that includes the famous Lystrosaurus that can be found all over the place, actually, but it's also found in Antarctica. So I'm excited to see what people find in the next decade coming out of Antarctica.
So our next question is from Noah, and says, "Hi, Kallie. I wanted to ask, in your episode about Spinosaurus, you mentioned how the only specimen at the time was destroyed in a world war. What do you think about humans' role in today's science? Do you think people will understand that science is where we need to put our energy and resources? And why do you think it's hard to get most people to value science?" That's a big question.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a tough question too. But let's first look at it through paleontology. And I think we humans have a responsibility to protect any fossil that we remove from the ground forever. And so this means there needs to always be funds to help conserve and preserve these important non-renewable resources. You can't just like go out and collect another T-Rex. You know, these are individuals, unique individuals from an ecosystem that we'll never have again. So that's a huge part of collections and museums and foundations and societies, is preserving all of these wonderful things that we've taken out of the ground for future generations. So that's part of it for like paleontology. So do I think Spinosaurus's fossils should have been taken down with all of the other paintings from the Louvre at the same time? Yes, but it's a lot harder to move fossils that could be up to a ton in weight versus like a 5-pound painting. So I can understand priorities, you guys, priorities during, a bombing event. But besides that, yes, I think we should definitely preserve everything that we take out of the ground. Now, how this translates to the general understanding and trust of science is a little bit more difficult. I think that a lot of people don't realize how interconnected we are with science, and that everything around you is made possible through science. So I'm talking to you through a computer, through the internet. I've got a ring light, everything around me, even my shower curtain background has some kind of technology in it. I mean, it's like a polyester. This is plastic. This is science. So I think that the more people understand how we are completely interconnected, our entire modern society is based on science and technology, the better we'll be. But sometimes I think most people assume that science is this thing that happens behind closed doors under a microscope and it has no impact on their day-to-day lives. But in reality, yes, science does happen under a microscope behind closed doors, et cetera, but it all has this interconnectedness to it. And it's happening all the time. Science is happening all the time, everywhere. Also, I think people get hooked on one issue, and for me in paleontology, that's usually evolution. And because it creates some kind of cognitive dissonance, they just ignore all of science. They just throw it all away. This one thing about science makes me uncomfortable, so I don't trust any of it. And I'm actually not 100% sure how we get back on track. I'm assuming it's going to have to do with who we vote into office. So, our vote has an impact on how people view science. And so if you have science denialists that are running the show, a lot of people are going to be science denialists. And so if we vote people in that trust and respect science, I think that will trickle down to the general public. But I don't know. That's like the $1 million question right now is how to get people to trust science.
No, it's definitely a question that a lot of us science communicators and educators are thinking about constantly, because even at our museums we get people who come in who are skeptical of the whole museum and the things we do, and we're like, yeah, we totally built this museum just to trick you guys.
Right. So I don't know what it'll take. It'll probably be a generational thing, and this too shall pass, but I don't know. Like I said, your vote counts. Voting is very important, all the way down from your little local city council all the way up to the highest seats of government. Like, you've got to vote in people that trust science.
Very true. Well, moving on from that one, speaking of trusting science, this question is from Andrea Rivera, and they're asking, what is your take on T-Rex and feathers?
It totally had feathers at some point in its life. It had to have. I mean, T-Rex is a theropod dinosaur that belongs to the group Coelosauria, and all of the members in that group are more closely related to birds than they are to other dinosaurs. And almost every single species, Coelosauran species, shows evidence of feathers, except for T-Rex. So, what is happening with T-Rex? Why haven't we found them? I have a couple of theories. One, a lot of the T-Rex material that was uncovered, especially during the early kind of renaissance of paleontology of the early 1900s, they weren't concerned with skin imprints or possible feathers. They were completely blinded by the bones. So they probably blew up a whole bunch of stuff that we'll never know just to get the bones out of the ground. Now we have a little bit more finesse when we go out into the field. We are looking for skin impressions. We are looking for feathers. And so I think it's just going to take some time before we find some really good evidence that T-Rex had feathers. Now, do I think that T-Rex was some kind of fluffy murder chicken? Probably not. I don't think that adult T-Rex would have been fully feathered, but I do think it would have retained feathers on some of the more showy regions, like the back of the neck or along the throat or maybe the tip of the tail. So as far as I know, the areas that I would expect to find feathers have not been found in skin imprints. I think we have the side of the belly and maybe the other side of the body, a skin imprint of a T-Rex, and it doesn't show feathers. But again, it's not where I would expect for feathers to be. So I totally think they did. Some other large tyrannosauroids like Dailong in China had feathers, so it's not a size thing. I think it's just a preservational bias on the Hell Creek Formation where you find Tyrannosaurus rex. So someday, fingers crossed, we'll find feathers on T-Rex.
I love murder chicken now. I have not heard that before, and I love it.
Best phrase ever.
Fluffy murder chicken. Yep. Well, I mean, technically it's more closely related to birds than it is to anything else, so.
It's true. And I've been chased by birds, and they're still scary, so the connection definitely exists there.
Yeah, we had a question on a live stream that we did for our Patreons if we would rather fight a goose that was the size of a diplodocus, or 100 tiny diplodocuses the size of a goose?
Oh man, I think I would rather take the
Everybody,
one large one.
the one large one? Most people answered the opposite way. I answered the opposite way because I want to see little miniature diplodocus.
Yes. Yes.
And they're also herbivores, so they
That's true.
wouldn't like want to eat you. They may want to bite you, but they
I,
won't eat you.
the only reason I say that is because I've been chased by one goose, and that was terrifying. So being chased by a lot of them would be even more terrifying. One large one, I feel like is a little bit more maneuverable to get around. I don't know.
True. Mm-hmm. Yes, like Andre the Giant and Wesley, their fight in The Princess Bride. You're so quick.
Yeah, just like that.
Oh man. Okay. This is from viewer Ines, who's from Germany, I believe, and they're asking, since they're on a different continent, is there a certain dinosaur or animal distinct for the area of today's Germany or Europe?
Oh yeah, fossils are found everywhere, and everywhere has their own unique set of fossils. So Germany, for example, has the Messel Pit. So that is full of spectacularly preserved life from the Eocene, about 57 to 36 million years ago. And then Germany also has the Solnhofen limestone that preserves extensive Jurassic aged fossils, including some of the best specimens of Archaeopteryx. So, I mean, Germany has actually a lot of really cool fossil localities. As for Europe on the whole, like, we don't have enough time today for me to talk about all the amazing fossil localities in Europe, but one of Europe's claim to fame is the first scientifically named dinosaur. So Megalosaurus was designated in 1824, and that's the first scientifically named dinosaur ever. So yeah, all over the place, everywhere. As like we just talked a little bit ago, Antarctica even has its own special set of fossils. So yeah, everywhere except for Hawaii has fossils.
Okay, so let's move on to some more questions about the show as well. How would you like to see Eons grow in the future?
Oh man, well, let's see. There's so many things. I mean, we're doing pretty good already. Like, there's the obvious goals, like more subscribers. I want to get that diamond play button at 10 million subscribers like Crash Course does. That would be amazing. It would be fun to win a Webby. So there's a whole award ceremony just for internet content, basically. That would be a lot of fun. I want to see us go on the road. I want to do field trip episodes. I want to figure out how we can work directly with the scientists to tell their stories, to tell their research, to be this outlet for paleontology. I want, when somebody says paleontology, I want the first thing that comes to their brain is eons. That might be a pretty lofty goal, but I want everybody to think of eons as being this amazing resource for paleontology immediately. Like, oh yeah, eons. Do you watch eons? Of course I watch eons. Everybody watches eons. We have 10 million subscribers, you know. So those are some areas that I think would be really fun. But continuing just continuing it is good enough for me. Just being involved with it, getting to share all these paleo stories and all these weird animals from the past is good enough for me. But I would really love that diamond play button, though. It'd be fun.
I think that's super attainable.
Yeah, I mean we were only 9 million away, I think, so we can do it.
That's nothing in this world. We'll get there.
That is within. Okay. Another question related to the show: how can scientists get involved with Eons?
Pitch us episode ideas. Let us know that you have cool research that comes out. Just let us know. Be in contact with us. You can get in touch with Blake or I through Instagram, through our emails, through Complexly. However is easiest for you as a scientist to get in touch with us is works great. Also, if you do pitch us an idea and you're familiar with the show, be thinking about that story arc that we need. Very rarely do we do an episode like, this animal is cool because it's cool. There needs to be a story. Like, we are storytellers. And so I think that if you do pitch us an idea, think about a bigger topic that fits into. Does that fit into any larger theories or hypotheses about whatever, I mean, paleontology is such a big field. It just is, there's so much to it. And so just stay in contact with us and let us know when you've got cool new science coming out, for sure.
And we'll be sure to put all of their contacts and stuff at the end of the episode, because I think, like you said earlier, Eons, for me at least, when it comes to like, oh, what's a great thing to teach people about paleontology, Eons is always the first thing that comes to mind. It's the first thing I share with teachers. And I'm actually meeting a lot more teachers nowadays who are like, oh yeah, we show Eons in our class. And it's a great way to connect the scientists to the teachers. You're the bridge between science and, the education. You are the avatar of paleontology SciCon, basically.
Yeah, I know. I want to be like, oh, it's a rain day in grade school. Instead of watching an old Bill Nye, let's watch Eons.
Yeah, it's 2020. Come on, let's do it. Well, speaking on that again, also, what can scientists do to be better science communicators or science storytellers, more likely?
Be enthusiastic. That is probably the most feedback I get from people whenever I do something like this, whenever I give a tour, whenever I give a talk. People are just like, wow, your enthusiasm is contagious. And I think that's really the key. You gotta love it. You gotta be excited about it. You gotta make stupid facial expressions about how much you love it, and people will absorb that. They'll be like, oh wow, this chick is crazy for fossils. Maybe she's onto something, And so I think that you really have got to be excited. And if you're not somebody that can perform, your excitement in public, don't feel bad. There's lots of science communication available for people that don't feel comfortable talking in public. So, for example, our script writers, I have no idea if those guys go out and stand on a little box outside and scream about how much they love fossils, like I've been known to do, but they are serving a very important purpose. They're amazing, brilliant storytellers. They're these wonderful writers, and they're creating something that then I, the talking head that has a lot of enthusiasm, can share with the public. So don't think that being a science communicator means that you got to be good and comfortable at talking in front of a lot of people, or sometimes in my case, I'm talking to 1 million people through a tiny little lens on my computer. That feels a little safer, but again, like, no matter what you do, if you're writing it, if you're saying it, if you're drawing it, whatever you're doing, be very enthusiastic about it. And I swear it will be contagious.
That's definitely the kind of feedback I've gotten when doing outreach, is just like, oh, you're so excited about this. It makes me want to learn more.
Yep.
Enthusiasm and curiosity counts for a lot.
Yep,
totally.
They do. It does. Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing too is, like, there's people like us out there who have more than enough enthusiasm to share. So if you are somebody who's not, you're not comfortable being on stage or being in front of people or being the center stage at all, talk to other people. Collaboration is a great part, or is a big part, of science communication. Me, Brittany, and Kallie, we've collaborated multiple times, and we can shout for so many people and advocate. So talk to other people who are willing to do this, and that's a great way to share your story if you're a little shy on sharing your story. Talk to Kallie, send her an email on Instagram, and maybe your story can get put on Eons.
Hell yeah. Yes, always. Like I said, we're always looking for our next episode. So,
all right. Is there a particular scientist you would like to work with?
Oh boy. Do they have, I mean, obviously, I guess they have to be alive for me to work with them. Man, there are so many cool people out there doing so many cool things. Like, I read this question and I was like, oh, I got this. And now I'm like, oh, who would I want to do it? I think it might be more of a topic. And then whoever is working on that topic, I would love to work with them more. Like we haven't done a lot of Australian stuff. We haven't done Australian megafauna. We haven't done Australian dinosaurs, although there's not a lot of them to talk about yet. But, finally getting into the world of Australia would be a lot of fun for us on Eons. And I know if you're watching this and you're a fan, you've probably commented to us about this, because this is probably one of our most asked for and requested episodes, is something about Australian megafauna. We're going to get there. Who else? What other kind of topics would I want to do? I am always a champion of the invertebrates. Megafauna invertebrates always get all the love all the time, and I get it. I mean, they're flashy, it's charismatic, but like, there are so many cool invertebrates. There's so many of them, and so getting to work with people, like doing another episode about the Tully monster, or at least an update, or man, there's just so much. There's so much. We've got an episode. I think I get the script. I might get the script later on today. Who knows? It could be in my email right now as we speak. But we're doing an episode about the boring billion, which, spoiler, it wasn't boring at all. And so I'm so excited because I get to host that episode too. Talking about these just extremely old periods of time that people, I think, already have a hard time understanding that deep of time, let alone what was living during that time, is always a lot of fun. I love geology-based episodes, and so, man, I don't know, everybody, all of them, all of science, like if I could just go hang out with the entirety of the Paleo Society and SVP at the same time, I'd be like, woo, this is great.
So actually, speaking about Australian paleontology, make sure you catch the Fossil Friday Chat episode featuring Australian paleontologists, Ben and James, both amazing Australian paleontologists talking about the deadliest ocean of all time. They're going to be looking at some amazing Australian marine mammals, and also they might talk a little bit about some of the megafauna, because I think James does a little bit of research on that. So you can catch that episode on our Facebook page. So what are your favorite paleontology documentaries or your favorite paleontology-themed media?
Ooh, okay, so, oh man, I mean, if I don't say Walking with Dinosaurs, I feel like I'm just like the biggest poser of all time, so I will say Walking with Dinosaurs. But I also liked, see, if I wouldn't have said it, somebody would be like, what? What was that? David Attenborough did history of the world, history of life. It was only available on UK, and I somehow got a DVD of it that was coded for the US. And he does a really good job because it's David Attenborough, and he doesn't really talk about fossils all that much. Best David Attenborough series of all time. Random tangent here. Life of Mammals, and he does talk about fossils.
Good one.
Life of Mammals.
I own that one. I must have watched that so many times.
Right? Oh, I love it. Now paleontology media. I do like pop sci articles that distill it down for me, so I don't actually have to read the dense peer-reviewed journal. I have a select group of writers that I really enjoy reading from, and I trust that they're distilling the information down correctly for me. So I really like to read about paleontology, like most of my free time reading, like, I'm going to pick up a book and read this afternoon, is actually about paleontology. That seems so boring because, like, there's so many different worlds you can enter with a book, but I choose to enter the ancient past over and over and over again. So I read a lot about paleontology all the time. Like, I just finished the history of dinosaurs, and what am I reading right now? I just started a new book. Oh, how thinking like a geologist, it's like timefulness or something. It's like how thinking about a geologist can save the world. Just basically understanding that like long periods of time, even though they feel like they're never ending, they do end. So this river system that you think will be here forever, the mighty Mo, for example, the Missouri River, yeah, it's not going to always be there. Like these systems change, and they change in very long time periods, but understanding that your effects today have long-term effects in the future is really important. So I really like to read books about paleontology, and then I also enjoy, obviously, Instagram. Paleontology is aesthetic. Fossils are beautiful, and they're very easy to make these really fun posts about. And so I love to see what other people are posting, even in their private collections, their work collections, because I unfortunately will never visit every single collection in the world. I'm sorry. I know that that's probably not going to happen. So if you have a social media account showing me all this stuff that I'll never get to physically see, that's a lot of fun for me. Yeah.
I agree. It's like a little tour, private tour through museums across the world.
Right. I know. It's so nice.
Well, thank you for joining us, Kallie. It was a joy to learn not just more about you and about paleontology, but about Eons and how it works and how it's going forward. So thank you all for joining us. Again, this is hosted by the Western Science Center and the Raymond M. Alf Museum. So we'll have information about both of our museums after this video, and you are welcome to join our social media platforms or support us in whichever way you so choose. And Kallie, how can our viewers find you and find Eons on the internet?
Eons is all over the place. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I think it's Eons Show on all of those. You can find Blake at Instagram. I think he has a whole bunch of social media platforms that he uses, but I know his Instagram, which is Western Digs. And you can find me, Fossil Librarian, Fossil_Librarian, just on Instagram. I only have time for one platform, so that's where I put my effort into. And then if you're interested in supporting Eons, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/eons, and make sure you help us get to that diamond play button by subscribing at youtube.com/eons.
All right. Well, thank you, and have a great day, everyone.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks for having me. Bye.